correctly ranking all 12 Star Wars movies from worst to best. I think we can almost all come to an agreement that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker comes in at a big fat last place. Listen, there's a few positives about this movie. First of all, I think visually it does look very good and like it's technically well made and all of that stuff, but in pretty much every other aspect of the actual story you're witnessing and the context of just being in the Star Wars universe, this thing is a complete dumpster fire. You can simply boil it all down to the decision to bring Palpatine back. Obviously, everybody knows the famous line, somehow he returned. Well, somehow he shouldn't have, and they should have done literally anything else. They should have had Snoke or Kylo Ren be the main villain of this trilogy. It would have easily been 10 times better, but the entire conclusion with Palpatine and Rey and all the Jedi versus all the Sith is just nonsense. Plus, there's just incredibly lazy moments in the movie with things like the Sith dagger just magically being a map to exactly where they need to go. At number 11, I have Attack of the Clones. Listen, I know there's a lot of super prequel defenders out there, and even the prequels that I didn't like Phantom Menace, have really been growing on me every time I rewatch them, but Attack of the Clones will never improve. Every time I watch this thing, first of all, it is just simply a boring movie, and this really shows that George Lucas needed somebody else in the room for the directing or writing. He had no idea what to do with the writing. Everybody just seems so stiff and stoic in this movie, but not in a good way. People will be like, oh, they're in a different galaxy. Why did I have to talk like we do here on Earth? Maybe that's what he intended. No, I don't care if that's what he intended. It sounds terrible to listen to. This entire romance between Anakin and Padme does not work as well as it should because of the terrible writing. The movie needed a lot more Dooku in my opinion. He should have been like half the screen time in this film because the amazing Christopher Lee is so incredible, and this character, as we saw in like the Clone Wars, had so much to him, and I feel like they just did not give him enough screen time in this movie. Like, yeah, Django's cool and all, but again, doesn't really have enough to do. At number 10, I have The Last Jedi. Now listen, this is a movie that took some big bold swings, and I respect a lot of the things it did, and honestly, I don't hate all of the big swings that this movie took. I just don't like the execution of it, and especially the ending of this movie just pisses me off, honestly. Listen, I'm not one of those crybabies that's so upset that they killed off Luke Skywalker. I think that was a bold decision and honestly a good move to make for the sequel trilogy to kind of get the Skywalkers out of it, at least for the moment in this movie. I just don't like the way it happened. It feels so silly and goofy, and you're like, wait, did he even die in this moment or whatever? Because of the stupid projecting myself across the galaxy and becoming one with the Force. I'm sorry, the moment doesn't work. There's also moments like the casino scene that I think just do not work at all and really downgrade this movie that has some good aspects around it, but too many things that are super negative really bringing it down. Number 9, we have the Clone Wars movie. This is kind of a huge step up from the last one, not because this is really like a great or good movie even, but it's just a solid enough enjoyable kids film that was just kind of the start of the Clone Wars series that we got. Kind of relatively low stakes, and it's not trying to do anything super impressive, so that's why it's not higher on the list, but it's not bad in any ways. It's just a super short enjoyable film that really doesn't do anything super wrong. At number 8, I have Star Wars The Phantom Menace. Listen, I still don't think it was the greatest idea to start the prequel trilogy with a literal baby version of Anakin. I think we could have had baby Anakin for like the first 30 minutes, and then we have a time jump to Hayden Christensen in this film, and they could have gone from there, but hey, that's not what we got, and I have to live with what we did get. There's a lot to actually really like in this. Everything between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan is incredible, and I just love their dynamic and how much Qui-Gon we get in this movie, obviously up until the very final battle that is also just A+. Yeah, some things like the pod race I think are super goofy and go on for way too long. That sequence feels like it's like 35 minutes of watching this kid go around in a pod. I also like how this movie is also very similar to A New Hope in a lot of specific ways. Obviously, it's its own thing. I know people use that as criticism of The Force Awakens. I see it in both these movies. I don't know why only The Force Awakens gets criticism for that, but I don't think it's a bad thing to reference the Star Wars that started it all. At number 7, we have Solo. Listen, I will be a Solo defender until the day I die. I think this is a really fun movie with lots of just big and exciting action sequences. I think Alden Ehrenreich is really good at playing Han Solo. It doesn't feel like he's doing a Harrison Ford impression, but at the same time, he's doing a good job of feeling like you're watching the same exact character from the original Star Wars trilogy. I think Kira is a great new Star Wars character that we got in this movie. Yeah, there's some really dud moments like Han Solo getting his name and lots of other things that happen in these type of prequel movies that are just like, hey, nod, wink, wink. This is something referencing what happens in the future that are a little bit too on the nose, but if you take those away, I think this is genuinely a very good movie. Number 6, I have Star Wars The Force Awakens. I still think this was a great new setup for the new sequel trilogy. Yeah, it absolutely fumbled after this movie, but it doesn't take away from this film on its own, in my opinion. Again, just like the rest of the sequel trilogy, it looks absolutely incredible. I think it's a great introduction to Rey. I love how they used Han Solo in this and the bold decision to kill him off. Kylo Ren and the First Order are incredibly badass in this movie, and I love how they're portrayed, and there's so many good moments in this. Again, it has a lot of similarities to A New Hope, but I personally like my Star Wars movies to feel like a Star Wars movie. Honestly, every time I rewatch The Force Awakens, it just makes me so sad how they kind of fumbled the rest of the movies, because there was really great potential set up in this movie, and then they just completely seemed like they changed their mind and had, obviously all the new creative voices coming in every movie, and it did not work. We're arriving at the top 5, so right now let me know in the comments below either your top 5 or just your ranking of all the Star Wars films, and leave a like on the video if you haven't already. But my number 5 is Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. I still think this is far from a perfect movie, but the highs of this film are absolutely incredible and just an absolute blast to watch every single time. Obviously, we have the incredible Anakin turn and his duel versus Obi-Wan, which is absolutely peak. I love the Yoda versus Palpatine we get in this, and everything with Palpatine fully swaying Anakin to the dark side. It's just so satisfying to watch in a sad and tragic way. Natalie Portman doesn't have a ton to do in this movie, but when she is on screen, she is just putting her all into this. Like, completely shows how bad the writing was in Attack of the Clones, because of the emotional performance she's putting in at the end of this movie when Anakin's fully going to the dark side. It hits every time. The iconic introduction to this movie, which still looks absolutely incredible to this day, even though it's been like 20 years since this thing came out. We have the incredible moment of Anakin just beheading Dooku, and obviously later in the movie you get the Obi-Wan versus Grievous. So many amazing fights and action sequences in this movie. It has to be in the top 5. At number 4, I have Return of the Jedi. I have one major beef with this movie, and it's in the very middle and some of the stuff on Endor. I think this movie does come to a complete standstill and kind of becomes a snooze fest, but the entire introduction and ending has some amazing Star Wars moments that makes it have to go this high up on my list. Like, I'm sorry, the third act of this movie is just perfect Star Wars. You get everything with Luke not turning to the dark side and giving in to Palpatine, and then his father saving him. It's enough to make a grown man cry, I'm not gonna lie. Obviously, then you get the incredible funeral scene at the end of it. Absolutely just peak stuff. I love the conclusion of the battle on Endor too, even though some of the stuff in the middle, like I said, put me to sleep. I love everything at the very beginning with the entire Jabba of the Hutt sequence too. Just a banger of a movie. At number 3, I have Rogue One. I think this is one of the most beautiful looking just movies we've got recently. I love everything about the way this is shot and the cinematography. It looks incredible. The third act in this movie is absolutely insane with a great ending. But it's not all just flashy and big spectacle stuff that makes this movie so good. We get such a great core group of characters here, led by Jyn Erso, who I think is an incredible protagonist in the Star Wars universe, and she really carries this movie in my opinion. But obviously she has a great supporting cast around her too. Like, you pretty much know the fate of these characters, but watching them all go through this, it gives you such an interesting perspective on the events of the first Star Wars movie, and I absolutely love this thing. Absolutely a banger. And number 2, I have the first Star Wars. I mean, come on, what is there even to say about this movie? I think we all know the story of this film like the back of our hand. It's just absolutely iconic stuff. It puts that good feeling of just hope and joy in you. It's funny in all the right ways. Like I said, I'm not going to go over the plot of the first Star Wars. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows what makes it great, and it's just an all-time great sci-fi fantasy film and just an absolute blast. But come on, we all know the number 1 is The Empire Strikes Back. You start off with an absolute banger where on Hoth, giving you an absolute visual feast with an epic battle there. You get everything amazing on Cloud City with one of the most charming people of all time in Lando Calrissian. Absolutely love everything there. His chemistry with literally everyone in this cast, even when he's betraying them, is incredible. And obviously you get the most iconic plot twist of all time with an amazing ending. 10 out of 10, one of the best movies ever made. Let me know your ratings in the comments below, and click above to watch another video on my channel.